That's
while
unacceptable,
fasting.
by the way. It's unacceptable.
I forget, I sleep throughout the entire day, and she's, calling me, nagging me, get up, do something.
Standard, don't worry. I'm sure every other person could relate to that as well.
I think the first day I slept around 14 hours.
Astaghfirullah.
Like Taraweeh, the night before, I was in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try finish the Quran twice. And the next day I just couldn't get up. So, Ramadan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the first episode of the Curious Muslims podcast. This is a series we're doing which covers different topics to do with Ramadan every week, and we're going to have different guests to cover those topics. Today we're in Al Salam Community School, joined by Brother Kifaya, who is our esteemed guest and host. How are you?
How you doing?
Alhamdulillah. How are you?
Really happy. Yeah, really happy to be here and to be able to share some ideas and really take advantage of this month. So Ramadan being Ramadan is something that we've been waiting for a long time. It's here now. I was thinking about this on the weekend about, Ramadan is one of the signs of Islam.
Yeah.
It's min al-sha'air. It's one of the signs of Islam. And it's actually part of piety that we get happy at the signs of Islam. So
what brings about this joy of Ramadan? You say you're looking forward to it. What's the joy for?
So on a personal note, it's the time where I can increase in Iman. It's as simple as that. For me, when I look at my year and my ibadah level, which is obviously our main purpose, how do we become better worshippers of Allah? How do we become better Muslims? Ramadan is where we do our training and we become better at what we do, and particularly worship routines. I've been speaking to the students here at Salam Community, and we speak a lot about how do you improve the quality of your worship. What do you do in your daily routine, whether it's your dhikr, your Quran, your Salah, that actually makes you better at it and it improves your relationship with Allah. So when Ramadan comes, why does it make us happy? Because we get to do that more. There's more people at the Salah, whether it's in school or whether it's in the masjid. More people go to the masjid, and obviously with the context that shayateen are locked up, you're more likely to have the right enthusiasm and the want to be able to do your best. And as the month goes on, you feel that. You feel that the first week is not like the second week, and when you get into the last 10 nights, you're like, okay, it's starting to finish. And so, I think that's what makes a person happy. Obviously, all actions are multiplied, so there's so much more barakah in Ramadan. Whatever you do in Ramadan is multiplied significantly. And even fasting, fasting in general, when someone's fasting, you're a lot more disciplined. You're a lot more conscious of your actions. You have more mental focus. Alhamdulillah. Really, really happy to be in Ramadan and to be able to have it in a community.
Alhamdulillah. So what small changes on a personal note do you make for yourself? You're going from no food and no water. You're in your principal of a school, very busy days. You're moving into Ramadan where you're not going to have that level of energy, which you do outside of Ramadan. So how do you change yourself mentally and physically to to embrace that sort of level of busyness?
So firstly, I think the whole concept of fasting in general gives you that focus. You're a lot more disciplined in your actions. I think it's worth saying that, as the Prophet ﷺ said, you don't want to make your non-fasting day like a fasting day. Fasting days mean something. They have to be significant. You've got to change your routine. You've got to do things differently. You've got to raise your game, right? So in as an individual, obviously the ibadah routines start with Fajr or before Fajr. Suhoor, if we can do as a family, if we can do some ibadah before suhoor, and that's great. It's usually it's easier on the weekends. We have to be realistic and have habits that we can actually sustain. And for working people, we've got to balance our responsibilities. But it's not a time where you make excuses because of tiredness. You know, sleep makes a big difference. You've got to make sure that your sleep is regulated and you're managing your time effectively. Every minute counts, right? Every minute is an opportunity for ajr. So yeah, obviously, so the day starts before suhoor. I think the time between suhoor and fajr, like in the school, we have a survey every year and about what time should we make the school start.
Okay. So
Typically, traditionally, it's always been like 8 till 1. So in Dubai and UAE, the Ramadan hours are usually 5 hours.
Yeah.
So students will go to school for 5 hours. But are those 5 hours best between 8 till 1 or 9 till 2 or 10 till 3? And it depends upon your routine. And I think for most people, they want to use the time at night, having a level of sleep as well. And so actually quite a few people, and it was quite split. We had like 25% of parents in the school, we have about 2,000 students, choosing different times. So some people wanted like a 7 o'clock start. So straight after suhoor, go from suhoor to fajr, and then from fajr to school, get it done. And then after dhuhr, then people come then have some sleep or carry on with their routines and prepare for iftar. So I think it's different for different people. Us as a community, we've chosen 8 o'clock. And that's a kind of a balance between those that are working and those that are studying, and also those that have responsibilities afterwards, cooking and preparing food for the afternoon.
So how would you suggest a student, so this is you're adapting to it, how would you suggest a student moving from that? Because they have studies, they have homework as well, they have the chores at home. So they're going from, again, no food, no water, back to fasting as well. They have to maintain a constant level of ibadah, go fajr, wake up really early in the morning to go up to school, come back. It's very draining. So how would you suggest to someone who's young to make that change, to allow themselves to make a better impact?
So the first thing I think is innamal a'malu binniyat, and that actions are by intentions, and your ajr is according to the level of your intention. And people underestimate the barakah that can come from really focusing upon that at the beginning. So at the school we have something called Are You Ready for Ramadan, which is an initiative that we do in Sha'ban that basically makes people get ready for the routines that are going to come in Ramadan. And that's the sunnah. The Salaf, they used to do something similar. Our tradition encourages us that the Prophet ﷺ, he himself did that. He fasted in Sha'ban, and you could see the increase in momentum before Ramadan starts. And so I think it starts with intention. And that's why actually if people are slow starting in the first week of Ramadan, then usually by second, third week, you can see them really enjoying the balance between their ibadah and their work routines. They get it right, or their study routines. Practically when in Ramadan, I think it's about having discipline. So at Salam at the moment in our school, we have assessments at the moment. So this 2 weeks is actually assessment. The first 2 weeks of Ramadan is actually assessments. We believe that we do both. We believe if you look at our tradition again, you find that the Prophet ﷺ and the companions and those that came after them did and achieved some of the highest things they could in that time, in Ramadan. They were fasting, right? So whether you're talking about battles, conquests, or other than that, achievements, we don't see a conflict, and that's even being shown by some of our contemporary Muslim personalities. Like we have famous footballers that are able to achieve at the highest level and perform at the highest level, and they are fasting, right, in a football game or otherwise, right? And that shows that there is no conflict, and that time is of the essence, and that you take advantage of your time, and you use it to your best advantage.
So, in Ramadan, do you see your students make that visual jump to try better themselves during the month? During the school day, you see maybe a jama'ah or something?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Obviously, the jama'ah probably increases 2-3 times over. There's definitely more students that make a conscious effort to pick up a mushaf, or if they wanted to wear the hijab, then there's those that do that. But the aim is that you shouldn't make your normal day like a fasting day. Your fasting day has to be better, and I think that goes across the field, and it's about intentions and raising the game. And actually, I think it starts with what are your targets. So practically speaking, if you want to get the most out of Ramadan, you've got a plan for it. And so what are your targets? Do you want to just memorize something or read something? Like, for example, is your aim to finish the Mus'haf once, finish the Quran once, reading one sipara or one juz each day? Is that the aim? Is the aim to to memorize certain du'as that you can use in your salah? Is it something else? Is it sunnah? You want to make sure that you fulfill the full amount of sunnah, ratib, that you can do, the sunnah the Prophet ﷺ used to do after each salah, and get the ajr of that, the house in Jannah, get that kind of ajr.
So, going back to the point where you said the Prophet and the Sahaba used to get you to be more productive and get lots more done during Ramadan.
Yep.
How do you say your school or you as a person do that, increase that productivity during this month?
Yeah. So I can't say I do it too well. I've got to admit, I don't think I'm the perfect example. I think if you was to ask people that know me, they'd probably say, But I think some of it is about. It's not just about quantity. It's about quality. There's a lot to be said about when we make our ibadah, we make it deep. So there is a lot amongst the scholars. They speak about the tarawih. Yeah, some people underestimate the value of the regular salawat. So from a kind of a practical point of view, people that don't pray regularly, it's really important that they understand that the obligatory prayers come before the voluntary prayers. And that might seem a bit strange because you're thinking Ramadan, you're thinking Tarawih, and you're thinking, okay, I've got to get to Tarawih. But if you miss your Asr because you've been sleeping, because you're tired, because you want a Tarawih, that's a big mistake. So you start, the Prophet ﷺ has encouraged us as much as possible to start with the obligatory deeds. They're the deeds that get us closest to Allah first and the most, right? So we start with them and we get them right, and then we do the extra deeds. And Tarawih is an extra deed. So it's a very important deed, but it's not as important as the regular salahs, the 5 salahs of the day. So I think doing that and doing it well with the sunnahs, and having a lot more focus in your quality of your ibadah can be equally as important as making it to the masjid every night, but you're missing out on other big things that you need to be doing in the day.
Yes, no one's perfect, obviously. I mean, I sleep during my halaqah in the morning. I'd be praying Tarawih, it ends late, 9:30, 10, and it's an early start, 7 o'clock, so I just doze off in the middle of halaqah, and it's tiring as well. So how would you suggest the fasting? What's the goal of fasting in terms of moving away from school and work and whatnot, as a fasting perspective? What are you looking to gain out of it?
So the ayah is لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That's the aim, is to become more pious, right? So it's about, you don't want to be, one of the signs, let me put it another way, the best way to understand how you treat your Ramadan is at the end of Ramadan, will you be able to continue those routines afterwards? Because it's a sign of qabul, it's a sign of acceptance that once you finish Ramadan, you maintain certain habits, and that means that those habits were accepted in the month itself, right? So when I think about fasting, a sign of a successful fast is that you would then continue those fasts afterwards. Your Mondays and your Thursdays would be something regular. The free days in the middle of the month, the white days, are something that you keep as conscious habit afterwards, because that maintains you. The 6 days that follow the 6 days of Shawwal that follow the Ramadan, those are the things that are going to show that your fast has been successful. But also the fasting is not just a fasting of hunger and thirst, right? Fasting is also of the eyes, the ears, the tongue, as is mentioned in the hadith. So they also fast, and they should also fast, and that fasting is as important. So we want to be people that are able to control our actions, not just our hunger and our thirst. So that means that we have to be able to be disciplined in how we use them. We use them for good things, and we can maintain that afterwards.
So you said it was a fasting of not only hunger and thirst, but of also the eyes, the ears, the mouth. And in a day and age where everything's happening instantaneous, like yesterday in the beginning of Ramadan, you get a text message on your phone, from Khalij Times telling you Ramadan's here, and then that's it. Everyone's hustle, bustle, this, that, preparing iftar and whatnot. And so it's the fasting of the ears and the mouth. in a day and age of so much fitna, how would you, address a youthful person to stay away from it?
Yeah, 100%. I just want to pick up on what you said about you get that text in the Khalij Times. It happens every year, and I was telling the students that during the Salah, after the Salah, everyone, when they get that message, it's like, oh my goodness, it's actually today. Yeah, because usually the tradition is it's on the first day, right?
Yeah.
The days of when it could be or couldn't be in the last few years, definitely, it's always turns out to be the first day of Ramadan, the first day of the two when sighting the moon. And it doesn't really hit you that Ramadan started, right? And then all of a sudden you've got to be at Tarawih within half an hour, and everyone's like, oh, we've got to get to the masjid, right? So that is the reality that shows that you might not be ready for Ramadan, right? So that's just picking up on that point. But then in terms of how we fast with our eyes and our ears and our tongue, obviously when it comes to eyes, you mentioned social media. That's a really good way to actually describe the different elements actually of these the senses with relevance to distractions. Yes. So Ramadan is about avoiding distractions and being disciplined. You have a target, you want forgiveness, you want to be able to get to Jannah, you want to get to the highest level of Jannah, and anything that comes in your way is therefore a distraction if it's going to take away from that aim. And so a disciplined person, a successful person is someone who keeps that target in mind, not just at the end of 30 days, because the hadith, don't forget, Man qama Ramadanan imanan wa ihtisaba. Man qama Ramadan is 30 days. A lot of people think that I might do 1 or 2 days and I've done it. Yeah. That my sins will then be forgiven, right? But standing for Ramadan or fasting Ramadan is not just 1 day, it's the whole month, right? So how do you maintain that stamina of ibadah before the dips happen at different parts in the month? Particularly, like usually it happens between like day 10 and day 20. Usually you see a bit of a dip and then everyone comes back up again for the last 10 nights. All the whole month. So I think that's part of it. But going back to social media, distractions, I respect the people who just don't use their phone for that month. Yeah. It's a bit hard in our modern age, but and you can get apps now that you can limit how much you can use or limit what apps you can use. People use it for the digital well-being in general, but you can also use it in Ramadan even more so. It applies even more so. Sometimes some people ask other people to monitor it, and especially kids, teenagers. There's no harm in consulting your parents and letting them control it. I think that's actually a good thing. That's a level of trust that you have in your parents, that you give them that ability. Sometimes we're all weak and we all get distracted, but the ability to give that and understand that to someone else so that they are involved in that dynamic is a good thing. It's a positive thing. So I think obviously you keep the distractions low. In terms of your eyes, if you were talking about specifically the hadith of when it comes to those parts of the body fasting, then lowering your gaze, I think is always a very good thing, and it's sort of encouraged in the sunnah. Not listening to something haram, and of bad speech or something that you shouldn't be listening to, and then also speaking good. So not speaking bad things, but speaking good things, and always advising people. That's good use of your tongue. So these are the literal meanings of that that hadith in how you use it. But wider afield for digital usage, my advice would be to, it's hard, but to just kind of semi-boycott, as in not boycott, but just withdraw. Yeah. And whether it's kind of giving a little message on a couple of WhatsApp groups, guys, I'm zoning out for Ramadan, or for the next week while I focus upon things that are more important or what we have in front of us. I think it's a good thing, and I think it should be encouraged.
So, Ramadan, most people think it's about fasting in itself. So they think wake up for Fajr, pray, have a bit of suhoor, and then fast to Maghrib, and you open your fast and pray Tarawih, and that's it. So, a lot of people, they would, maybe busy themselves with something else. They'd, play video games in between Asr and Maghrib when they should be, doing something else. Especially because Ramadan is the month which the Quran was revealed in. Yeah. And, from someone going from maybe doing little to no Quran in a week to moving to, having to complete the entire Quran in 1 month.
Bit difficult.
How would you make that change from going from little to no Quran to, the entirety of it?
So just to emphasize that it's not an expectation that you have to go 0 to 100. You know, Islam is there to be able to develop people, and it's there to be, and everyone is at their level. And the idea is that you try your best to do a little bit more. And so when we're talking about Quran, those that have memorized 25 juz, we want to raise them. What would be the advice that we'd give them? You've memorized 25 juz, or you've memorized 28 juz. To that 2 extra juz or that 5 extra juz, that's your target in Ramadan. Yeah. You can do that. That's within your. In education circles, we call it zones of proximal development. Yeah, is that kind of like what you're able to do, right? Yeah. And so that kind of thing, we think, yeah, that's your target. You can do that. You push yourself. But someone who hasn't memorized Surah Fatiha, or was not able to read Quran, it's a different target. It's a different setup, and we would be advising them separately. So that focus upon maybe reading an ayah with a teacher, finding someone or a friend who knows how to read Quran and read with them one-on-one. That would be their first step, especially in the extra deeds. Yeah. And I really want to emphasize that more important than the extra deeds is the essential deeds. And the essential deeds of Salah should be the same. Whether you're a beginner or you've been practicing Islam for a long time, the Salahs are essential. And those make up the basics of your religion. But the extras, like for example, how much you read of Quran, how much ajr you're going to get. Don't forget that there's a lot to be said about the person who struggles with reading Quran, the letters of the Quran. Right? There is extra ajr on offer, and and there is a lot of barakah in the person who is trying to read Quran, particularly, especially in Ramadan, because don't forget that the Prophet ﷺ, he himself spent that focus of Quran in Ramadan. In his he learned it from Jibreel in Ramadan, right? And in the last year before his last Ramadan, he did it more than once, did it twice. So these are kind of incentives for us to take Quran more seriously, but everyone to their level.
Yeah. So you said that the Prophet he would implement the Quran as well as fasting in his days. Then Jibreel would come down, he'd learn it. But Ramadan is a season of change, not only from an Islamic point of view, but also from a non-Islamic point of view. For work, for your house. So how would you make yourself change for that perspective outside of Ramadan, outside of the Islam? How would you make it a season of change?
So firstly, what we've been speaking about so far has mainly been worship. And obviously worship has different meanings and different contexts. The context that I've been referring to worship, what we've been speaking about, is like the relationship between you and your Rabb, the relationship between you and your Lord, right? Your personal relationship, and how you develop your worship routines, like Salah, like Quran, like Dua. Of course, worship is a wide meaning, right? And we take the meaning of worship to be anything that is done to seek the pleasure of Allah, to seek the pleasure of God. So therefore, when you say about outside of, in your work environment or your school environment, or generally in society, we have a responsibility to be able to fulfill our worship requirements there as well. But the worship requirements will be different. So there will be, one that comes to mind is the Prophet ﷺ was very charitable in Ramadan. Ramadan was something that he was even more, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said that he was even more charitable in Ramadan than he was outside Ramadan. And so this is something that we should be encouraging. And you can see that in Dubai and wider in UAE, everyone is just regularly giving in whichever way they can. And I think that's something we should encourage. But then also, other than that, is just being a model Muslim, doing your role as a Muslim, and seeking closeness to Allah by being good to everyone around you, your neighbor, your colleagues at school, your friends at school, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim. And so your interactions as an individual make a big difference in that.
So, the times have changed, and we're in an age where you can talk to anyone, you can communicate very efficiently, and we all want our role model to be the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you want to be like him, you'd have to apply his methods, so how he wakes up, suhoor, fajr, whatnot. But in a time where it's so different to when he lived, how would you try and apply the way he lived his life to the current situation now?
So first thing, misconception often when it comes to this topic is that people sometimes feel that the way that the Prophet ﷺ lived is not applicable to the way that we should live. You know, it was in a certain context where maybe times have changed now. We're now in a modern times where lives are different.
Yeah.
But the essential is still the same. And the Rabb of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions is the same Rabb that gives us guidance as well. And that's a really essential point. Actually, if you take away from all of the different aspects of society, what is how you practice Islam then is how you can practice it now, especially as an individual, especially in your worship and your relationship with Allah. So I think when I think of that, I think apply the Sunnah. And the Sunnah is timeless. Of course, there are certain contexts and opinions and situations where we apply Islam differently, but dua is dua, salah is salah. You're being good to people is being good to people. Charity is charity, zakat is zakat, Ramadan is Ramadan. Same aspects. Our qibla is still the same. Everything is as it needs to be from the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But it's about how do we then apply that in our lives. And I think that's an important point, because people then lose that focus. That, okay, how do I take the Sunnah and apply it in my life? And I think it's a lot easier than what people think it is.
So, the Prophet used to focus a lot of his ibadah, a lot of his worship in the last 10 days of Ramadan.
Yep.
On odd nights and whatnot, he'd do, extra tarawih, he'd wake up for qiyam.
Yep.
And what do the last 10 nights mean to you, and as well as an Islamic perspective? What makes it different from the other 20 days?
So, obviously, the last 10 nights, if you look at it from the Prophet ﷺ's point of view, then he used to take it more seriously than the other 10 nights. Why is that? Because in those 10 nights is a special night.
Yeah.
And that special night is a night, of course, worth more than 1,000 months.
Yeah.
And it's a night that in which the Quran was revealed, right? And it was also, or it was sent down, to be more accurate. And at the same time, it's a night that if you get it right, your sins are forgiven, right? So it's a big night. But intentionally, it's a night that is not being told to us,
Yes.
right? And that's because you want to be able to because Islam is not just about one occasion in one place, right? You don't have to go to Makkah to be forgiven. You can get forgiven in lots of different contexts, even in your own house, right? There's ajr in different places. And it's the same with the last 10 nights, or in Ramadan in general. So we seek out Laylatul Qadr. It's a night that we get really, really excited about. We want to be able to make sure. It could be the 20th, it could be the 29th, who knows. But we want to make it work in all of those 10 nights to make sure that we've done enough, so that if it was one of the nights that or any of those nights, we got onto it. And so, of course, it's those last 10 nights and that we take more seriously. Again, quality is more important than quantity.
Yes.
Quality is always more important than quantity. So we want to improve the quality of our ibadah, the quality of our relationship with Allah in those nights. You could pray lots of raka'at, units of prayer, but if you pray them with not the right way or not the right intention or not according to the Sunnah, it won't have the same impact.
So, to sum it all up, say from, my perspective, I have A-levels coming up. It's going to get very busy during Ramadan. You have to go to lots of people's houses, iftar and events. And especially the last 10 nights, you're going to be, waking up for qiyam, which is at 1:30 in the morning. Yep. And, school, as you said, it starts at 8, but not all schools are as merciful as yours. Yeah. So how
it's not about being merciful. Astaghfirullah. I think it's just the situation that they have.
Yeah. So, for someone like me, what would you give for the last 10 nights? How would you say I adjust my, workload or, work to suit myself for the last 10 nights, to get ready, to make sure I maximize my ibadah in those last 10 nights?
Yeah. I'm going to give you my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I know this is a podcast and it's wider field, but I'll just give you my personal opinion, and I'm sure you can consult with lots of other people. For someone who has got serious study and they've got commitments, it's a balance. Yeah. And I want to emphasize that quality is more important than quantity. And sleep is essential. Managing your sleep and the right times at the right places will make all the difference. and the sunnah technically is that you do sleep a little bit at night time. Tahajjud is called that for a reason. Qiyam al-Layl is something that is more valuable when you are giving it its due. And so I think it's difficult to be able to do the whole 10 nights all night, because the next day when you've got, alhamdulillah, I don't think that in this period now in March you have exams. So it's not as intensive as, if this was in, I know, Ubaid, I know people that were fasting in Ramadan when it was in May and June, and in England, where the hours are a lot longer and the time for qiyam and the time for suhoor is a lot less. So 10 o'clock Isha like this, or 9 o'clock Isha, and suhoor is like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. You're very limited, and even some people I knew that were imams of masajid, so they were doing their A-levels, but they were also leading the salah for the last 10 nights. And then, mashallah, they also managed to get the A-level results that they wanted to get. So it's doable. You can push yourself to the limits, but you've just got to be very, very particular about how you use your time, particularly sleep.
So that's for me. I'm 16. I'm very old. Okay. But then maybe for like a child 7, 8.
Yeah.
And it's coming to Ramadan, and they're 100%. Excited. But first day comes around, they get put off it maybe because of the fasting. There's no food. Yeah. So say they do get put off it. How would you encourage them to come back to it? How would you encourage them to maybe if it's a girl, put on the hijab, if it's a boy, fast and keep your eyes away from things and whatnot.
Yeah.
So how would you encourage a small child to come, to do Ramadan to its fullest, to read the Quran and to do ibadah?
Yeah. So firstly, obviously for children, then it's a slow, steady process, right? So they're not obligated to fast, but we highly encourage it because it gets them used to actions early, so then they can do it more. And you'd be surprised at how many children can actually cope with fasting. A lot more than we think we can. But obviously there's an advisory there that every parent will know their situation, and they make that judgment, and they're the best place to be able to advise for their own children. In terms of just how do we get different people to do more of good deeds according to their situation, obviously I think it's very specific about their situation. So if you're looking at children and talking about younger children, I think there's a lot to be said about just half fasts, or like a fast that they do one day, they don't do it the next day, rewards, prizes, recognition like that. I think that goes a long way. A lot of positive reinforcement. I've been really happy with what they've done and really recognize them celebrating the success in the family, particularly. I think that counts for a lot. And like that, I think it's very specific to to each person's situation, and especially without judgment. I think that's an important thing to say. It's not about judging whether someone is doing the right thing or not. It's about or have they achieved exactly what's required. But it's about trying your best, especially when they are at a younger age or a younger stage in their development of Islam.
So, Ramadan, you're getting closer to Allah, you're trying to, worship Him all the time, read Quran and fast. But, you also, in doing so, you may neglect, your family. I certainly neglect my mother's chores when she tells me to do them.
That's unacceptable, by the way. It's unacceptable.
I forget, I sleep throughout the entire day, and she's, calling me, nagging me, get up, do something.
Standard, don't worry. I'm sure every other person could relate to that as well.
I think the first day I slept around 14 hours.
Astaghfirullah.
Like Taraweeh, the night before, I was in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to finish the Quran twice. And the next day I just couldn't get up. So, Ramadan, it'll bring you closer to Allah, but you could forget about other things.
Correct.
How would it bring a family together? How does it generate that closeness in a family?
Yeah. So I think routines counts for a lot. Routines is so, and I think most parents, and this is now talking to the parents, I think parents have a responsibility that they set the routines in their household, and they set the rhythms of how iftar should happen. Some houses, for example, do the men go to the masjid straight after, or do they stay in the masjid and the adhan gone? Do they eat at home the full meal and then they pray? Those kind of routines, and having that set and consistent every day makes a difference. And obviously, we want to maximize that opportunity. So, men going to the masjid is, and then coming back and eating, for example, is one way of doing it. That's obviously a lot more ajr praying in the masjid. But my point is more just about routines. And so the suhoor routine, making sure that is something that's established and it's something that's routine in how a family would work. But I was just going to say that when you talk about chores, pleasing your parents is from the essentials of the deen. And really that iftar time shouldn't be something that is a busy time. It's the most blessed time of the day and maybe even the year, because it's a time when there is a istijaba, there is a response to the dua. So therefore, that's a time that you want to be away from the mechanics of cooking and preparing food. Should be done by then, ideally. Obviously it's not possible always, but ideally that's the period of time where you want to have done what needed to be done, and you can concentrate for that half an hour before Salah, Maghrib or the Adhan, on ibadah. And that's a collective effort. So when you talk about how you can do other things as someone who's trying to be obedient to their parents, I think that counts for a lot. Relieving that upon your parents, maybe even having a rota of when you're doing completely. You take it off their plate completely and allow them to have their moment. Because there is a bit too much in our communities, unfortunately, about the food and the preparation for the iftar and guests and visits between families at certain crucial times. And so if you can relieve that as one of the members of the family, that's a good thing.
And so we're talking about Ramadan as a whole this year, but you obviously it's a season of change, so there has to be something different between this year and last year.
Yeah.
So what would you say makes Ramadan different every year?
Different every year in which way?
In any way, outside of the Islamic, inside Islamic ways,
Yeah.
How would it differ?
Yeah. So I think, as I said, Ramadan brings a lot of change in people. And when you're comparing Ramadans one year to another, if your Ramadan hasn't made you better, then there's a question to have, a little self-reflection to have there. What is going wrong in your reflection process, in how you are thinking about? And actually, Ubaid, it actually does come down to things like, do you take life and death, and understanding of life and death in the right way? And does your iman go to the level where you realize the seriousness of these topics? And the reality is that all of us are going to pass away. And if we really understand that that's going to happen, are we ready for that? And are we preparing the right deeds to be able to show on that day? And as Muslims, if we feel that, if we believe in a day of judgment, we believe in a day where we're going to be accountable for actions, there's going to be a weighing of deeds, there's going to be literally everything that you've done there to be reviewed, then we need to do that this Ramadan more so than the next Ramadan. So we take it now, we make sure we got it right, and then we go from there. And hopefully that will cause a change. Definitely Ramadan in itself is not enough, if that's what you want, if that's your point. You're going to have to make sure that after Ramadan, you put things in place to be able to continue those good deeds afterwards. And also to put things in place that's going to stop you from doing the bad deeds that you don't want to do. That's not something that we do in Islam as well.
So, coming back to your topic of seriousness, how would you teach a child to be that serious? Because I remember last year, the first Taraweeh, I was sneezing and I was laughing, I was, giggling. And it was just, there's those small moments where, you lose that focus, you lose that seriousness.
Yeah.
So, I think sometimes it's built into grown-ups.
Yeah.
Someone's old, they're just serious straight away.
Yeah, maybe it's a concentration thing. They just kind of zone out or something when they get older.
So like for me, I always think that they have it so easy. They're serious all the time. How would you teach that seriousness to someone like me who doesn't have it?
So firstly, I think you do have it. You just don't have it at certain times. Yeah. So you're underestimating yourself, mashallah. But I think seriousness is something that is, it's not just for the Salah. It's not an Islamic thing. This is just maturity in general. So people are going to be levels of maturity in all their life, in their day. Unfortunately for Salah, it's more important, not unfortunately, but in Salah it's more amplified because you need to get it right because your Salah is being affected. And that's a relationship between you and your Rabb. you and your Lord, and ultimately you're speaking to Allah in that conversation when you're praying. So it is a bit more high stakes, more important. But I think it's an age thing naturally. There are obviously some natural, normal things you can do in the sunnah. So you can turn to your left and you almost fake spit. It's like going like this, this. This is something that you can do. That's kind of narrated in the sunnah. But it's not just about being serious in the salah. I think it's also about being conscious in your salah. And I think when you're conscious in your salah, it'll make a difference. So maybe you need to freshen it up a little bit. Yeah. Some people, when you said about how adults they pray their salah in ways that are quite routine and monotone, right? They're just going through the motions. That's not necessarily a good thing either, right? So if you're conscious and you're aware in your salah, it's a good thing. Yeah. Hopefully that doesn't make you smile and laugh and that kind of thing. Yeah. But you can do things to keep the consciousness alive. And some examples would be that we're encouraged in Islam that we freshen up the different adhkar that we do in the salah. Yeah. So for example, you don't have to always read Surah An-Nas when you're reading your salah, right? If you know other surahs, you should try those other surahs. That will be a conscious change in your routine of the salah. And then you're thinking, okay, let me try reading a different surah. When you're in your ruku' and you're praying and you're doing Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, you don't have to do Subhana Rabbiyal Azim. You have to do Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, but you can complement it with other adhkar that you can do that also are narrated in the sunnah in the ruku'. In the sajda, same thing. If you might just read Subhana Rabbiyal A'la, and you might just be used to just doing Subhana Rabbiyal A'la, and that's part of your salah, right? But why not mix it up a bit, freshen it up a bit with some du'as in Arabic, of course, because obviously it has to be in Arabic in the salah, in the sajda, and make it something that is a bit new, a bit fresh, that you've got to prepare for, and that's going to improve your relationship. You know, you're just going to have to do something. And doing a lot of those small little gestures, I think, is useful as well. You know, that's something that we know from the sunnah that used to happen. The Prophet used to read one thing one time, another thing another time, and that's something that we should. It's actually important for us to do as to establish the sunnah in general. Yeah. That you are, it's called ihya sunnah. That you are you are reviving the sunnah. Yeah. So you revive the sunnah by doing different things at different times to be able to keep it conscious in the community, keep it conscious in your practice. Yeah. So, you know, just to sum it all up, we've talked about coming into Ramadan, preparing for it. We've talked about what you're going to do in Ramadan, you know, how you're going to prepare for, you know, the Quran, the work and whatnot, how to get closer to your family. Yeah. Now, what's the main takeaway from Ramadan? So after the month, what are you going to, you know, take away from it in terms of, you know, are you going to take away a different spiritual sense or a mental sense, physical sense? How would you say that? I think when I think of that, I'm sure like many other people, when Ramadan is leaving, you feel sad, right? You feel it's going, and it's like 1 day's left, half a day's left, and is Eid going to be tonight? Why can't it be the next night? You know, like this kind of thing. You want Eid to come, but we want an extra day of Eid, right? An extra day of Ramadan as well. So that feeling, we should hold on to that feeling and remember that feeling, that, you know, we enjoyed Ramadan, and why we enjoyed Ramadan. We enjoyed Ramadan for the worship that we did, and that we were getting it right. You know, you were doing things that were the right things, that was building towards your Jannah, building towards what you want to achieve in your life. You want to worship Allah, you're doing the right things to get there, right? So Ramadan, in that way, we want to then continue after Ramadan, right? And you can do. And as is well known, the Rabb of Ramadan is the Rabb after Ramadan, right? So we can make our ibadah continue afterwards. There are some easy ways to do that in the Sunnah, again, which is obviously the 6 days of Shawwal, which you can start straight after Eid, but also you can spread it if you wanted to, as some scholars have allowed. So that's easy way of being able to continue your actions beyond Ramadan. And as we said earlier, the actions being accepted in Ramadan, whether they're being accepted is shown in how you continue them afterwards. And we should be conscious that we want to continue. You know, there's a lot to be said, not to talk from an Islamic point of view necessarily, but there's a lot of said about Atomic Habits. It's a book that's kind of very, it's a really good book, I'd recommend it. But it talks about how you build those small little routines, right? And those small little routines that you get going in Ramadan, you need more time to be able to develop them after Ramadan. So actually, after Ramadan, continuing those same habits afterwards, whether it's the adhkar after the salah, whether it's you praying your sunnah, or it's when you consciously realize the adhan's gone, I need to go to the masjid. Whatever it is that's that trigger that you're going to do different, maintaining them after Ramadan is going to be really valuable in the long run, because the whole idea is you make incremental changes, and those incremental changes will lead to bigger changes. In Islam, good deeds lead to good deeds. Yeah, so the heart is by its nature goes softer with good deeds, and the more good deeds that you do, your iman goes up. The more you're going to do more good deeds afterwards. That's our tradition. So that's what we try to build from.
Yeah. So I think our time is up. It's we've had a fair few points to discuss. I hope you enjoyed it.
Loved it.
I hope people took some information out of it. Inshallah, we'll see you next week. Jazakallah khairan for coming, for hosting us. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.